Okay, so we've all been there, right? Like that moment when your kid, they don't make the team, or maybe they get rejected for something they really, really wanted.
Yeah.
It's like a gut punch, isn't it? And as parents, I think we want to like wrap them in cotton wool and make it all better.
It's tough.
But the reality is rejection is going to happen. Like it's a universal experience.
Hmm.
And it's almost like the more we can equip our kids to deal with it, the better, rather than try to shield them from it.
Yeah.
So today what we're doing is we're doing a deep dive into some practical tips to help our kids not just cope with rejection, but to use it as fuel, as a springboard.
Absolutely. And I think what's so interesting is that so often we as parents, we try to shield kids from negative emotions,
Mm.
right? But those moments, like those tears and frustrations, they're actually incredible opportunities for learning.
It's so true. And you know what? It actually leads perfectly to tip number one, which is to acknowledge their feelings. I know it's like so tempting to just jump in and be like, oh, honey, don't worry, or like, you'll get him next time, like all
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. But the experts are actually suggesting we do something a little bit different.
Yeah, instead of trying to I don't know, dismiss their sadness or their anger,
Hmm.
we actually validate it.
Okay.
So saying something like, it's okay to feel disappointed. I get it. I understand. That actually helps build their emotional intelligence.
Okay, let's unpack that a little bit. Emotional intelligence, we hear that term all the time. But like, what does that actually look like in this situation?
Yeah. So it's about helping kids identify and name their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and think about it as the first step to learning to actually process those feelings in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So instead of being overwhelmed, by sadness or anger, they learn to recognize. They're like, okay, this is disappointment. I felt this before. I can handle it.
I love that. I love that because, we're not saying don't feel those feelings. We're saying you're feeling them. Now, what are we going to do about it? We're
Yeah.
giving them a framework, which I think is fantastic. Okay, so tip number two takes a slightly different approach. It's actually suggesting that we share our own experiences with rejection. And I'll admit, when I read this one, I was a little bit like, ooh, I don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah. I can imagine that there might be a little bit of hesitation, but actually it can be incredibly powerful on a couple of levels. Firstly, it humanizes you as a parent. You shift from being the sort of perfect parent to someone who actually understands the sting of rejection firsthand. So
Yes.
it shows your child that you're in their corner. You're not just preaching from some, untouchable pedestal.
Yeah.
But here's the real magic. It models vulnerability as a strength.
Yes. Tell me about that. That's what I love about this.
Think about it this way. By opening up about our own setbacks, we're showing our kids that rejection doesn't have to define us. It's a stepping stone. It's a chance to actually learn and grow.
So is this where we share a story? Like maybe that time we didn't make the basketball team, but then we actually discovered, photography.
Exactly. You're showing them that rejection doesn't have to be this dead end. In
Yeah.
fact, it can open doors to opportunities that you might not have even considered otherwise.
Wow.
And that kind of leads us into tip number 3, which is to encourage trying again.
I love that because sometimes that's all it takes.
Right. Yeah.
It's like a different strategy, a little more practice, or even just the courage to put yourself back out there.
Absolutely. And this is where we can loop in that concept of a growth mindset, right?
Yeah.
So instead of viewing our abilities as fixed, we're encouraging our kids to see them as skills that can be developed.
Okay.
So when you reframe rejection as an opportunity for growth, it loses its power to define us.
Yes. It becomes less about I'm not good enough and more about what can I learn from this experience, which I
Yeah.
think is fantastic.
Exactly.
Okay, tip number 4, praise effort over outcome.
Well, I love this one.
I know, because isn't that what it's all about? It's like at the end of the day, the effort is what we can control.
Right.
We can control how much effort we put in, how diligently we practice, how prepared we are.
Yeah.
And so when we focus on those things, that's fostering intrinsic motivation.
Absolutely.
So what does that look like? Like, how do we do that?
So instead of saying, oh, I wish you'd gotten the part in the play, we say, I am so proud of how hard you worked to prepare for that audition.
Yes.
It shifts the focus from something external, like getting chosen for something,
Yeah.
to something internal, their own dedication, their own growth.
Yes. It's about finding the satisfaction in the journey, not just the destination, which I think is so key for all of us.
Yeah.
Okay, final tip. And this one I think is huge. Teach resilience. If there's one thing we could give our kids, like if you could bottle it up, it'd be resilience. Because let's face it, rejection, it's a part of life. The key is learning to bounce back from it, to adapt, to keep going even when things get tough.
Yeah,
It's not about avoiding the fall. It's like, how quickly can you get back up?
right.
But how do you teach that? I feel like that's a big one.
It starts with us as parents. We need to model resilience in our own
Mhm.
lives.
What does that look like?
How do we deal with setbacks? How do we handle disappointment? Our children are always watching us,
Yeah.
right? And they learn more from our actions than they will ever learn from our words.
Oh my gosh, this is so true. So powerful. So if we want our children to embrace challenges, to view rejection as data and not defeat, we need to embody that resilience ourselves.
hmm
I love that.
I mean, imagine a world where we all approach rejection with that mindset
Right.
as an opportunity for growth, a chance to learn, a chance to adapt. I mean, what could our children achieve in a world like that?
I love that thought. It's not about avoiding rejection, it's about reframing it. That's what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.